Okay, here we are back for the second part of The Snow Spider, with special backwards writing that only teachers can read. Writing like that is very difficult. You have special training in how to read backwards writing. So, Gwyn is going to have a birthday party. Mum kept her word. Alan Lloyd arrived at 4 o'clock, but he had brought his twin brothers with him, which was not part of the arrangement. There were 9 Lloyds, all crammed into a farmhouse, only one room larger than the Griffiths. Alan, Gareth and Sian had all brought a gift, and Mrs. Griffiths, guessing the outcome of her invitation, had provided tea for 7. Kneeling on the kitchen floor, Gwyn tore the coloured paper off his presents. A red kite, a pen, and a pair of black plastic spectacles with a large pink nose, black eyebrows, and a black moustache attached. "Looks like your dad, doesn't it?" giggled Sian, and he snatched up the spectacles, put them on, and began to prance up and down the room, chest out and fingers tucked behind imaginary braces. Suddenly, it was like other people's birthdays, the way a birthday should be, but Gwyn's never was. They put on one of Nain's records. It was very gay and very loud. A fiddle, a flute, a harp and a singer. The sort of music to send you wild. And the Lloyds went wild. They drummed on the table, jumped on the chairs, stamped on the floor, waved the dishcloths and juggled with the cat. The cat objected and Sian retired temporarily from the merrymaking, bloody-eared but unbowed. Nain began to dance in her purple dress and black lace stockings, her dark curls bouncing and her coloured beads flying. She wore silver bracelets too, that jangled when she raised her arms, and a black shawl that swung out and made the candles flicker. "Me gain I dippen u dobach tot, a grentir doors bobbore. Heidi hi, di hi, di heidi ho, gwentir doors bobdore," sang the singers, and so sang Nain in her high, quivering voice. The Lloyds thought it the funniest things they had ever seen, and clutching their sides, they rolled on the floor, gasping and giggling. Gwyn smiled, but he did not laugh. There was something strange, almost magical about the tall figure spinning in the candlelight. Down in the field, Gwyn's father heard the music. For a few moments he paused and listened while his cows, eager to be milked, ambled on up to the farmyard. Mr. Griffiths regarded the mountain, rising dark and bare beside the house, and remembered his daughter. A white cloth had been laid on a long oak table, so white it almost hurt your eyes, and upon the cloth the best blue china, red napkins, plates piled with brightly wrapped biscuits with sugar mice and chocolate pigs. There were crisps and popcorn, and cakes with coloured icings on a silver stand. There were crackers too, decorated with gold and silver paper, and in the centre of the table a magnificent green jelly rising above a sea of ice cream. The Lloyds crowded into the doorway beside Gwyn and gazed at the splendid spread. Gwyn felt so proud. "Oh, ma'am," he breathed. "Oh, ma'am." Then Gareth and Sian rushed past him and drew out their chairs, exclaiming, Gwyn, come on, let's start, we're starving." "It's the grandest birthday table I've ever seen," said Alan. "Our ma'am has never done anything like that." "Nor has his until today," said Nain. "It was about time." Gwyn took his place at the head of the table, and they began. There was so much chatter, so much laughter, no one heard Mr. Griffiths come in from milking and go upstairs. And Mrs. Griffiths, happy and gratified, did not notice her husband's boots beside the back door, nor his coat upon the hook when she went into the kitchen to fetch the birthday cake. The cake was huge and white, with chocolate windows and silver banners, and on each of the 9 towers a flaming candle. "Turn out the lights," cried Gareth, and he sprang to the switch, plunging the party into cosy candlelight again. They were still alight when Mr. Griffiths came downstairs again. Crackers were banging, and no one heard feet upon the tiled kitchen floor tapping in unfamiliar shoes. When the door opened, the tiny flames glowed fiercely for a moment, and then died. Except for a white shirt, Mr. Griffiths was dressed entirely in black. He stared at the table in cold disbelief. The shock of the electric light jolted the party out of its homely cheerfulness. The birthday table looked spoiled and untidy. Someone had spilt orange juice on the white cloth. "What's this? Celebrating, are we?" Mr. Griffith's mouth was tight, his face white with displeasure. Sean was still wearing the spectacle mask, and his brothers began to giggle. He did resemble Mr. Griffiths. "It's Gwyn's birthday, Ivor," Mrs. Griffiths explained nervously. "You're just in time for—" "I know what day it is." Her husband spoke the words slowly through clenched teeth, as though the taste was bitter. "There are candles wasting in the kitchen, chairs on the floor, and look at this litter." He flung out his hands, indicating the table. "Oh, sit down, Ivor Griffiths, you miserable man," said Nain, "and celebrate your son's birthday." "Miserable, is it?" Mr. Griffiths' big red hands were clasped tight across his chest, one hand painfully rubbing and pressing at the other. "Miserable, is it, to be remembering my own daughter who is gone? My daughter who went on this day 4 years ago?" Suddenly Mrs. Griffiths stood up. "Enough! We've had enough, Ivor," she protested. "We remember Bethan too. We've mourned her going every year on this day for 4 years. But it's Gwyn's birthday, and we've had enough of this mourning. Enough! Enough!" She was almost crying. Gwyn turned his head away. He did not want to look at the bright colours on the table. He did not want to see his friends' faces. He knew that his birthday was over. His mother was talking, but he could not listen to the words. She was taking his friends away. He heard them shuffling into the kitchen, murmuring goodbye, but he could not move. His father was still standing by the table, sad and silent in his black suit. "How could you do that, Ivor?" Nain reproached her son as the front door slammed. "How could I? I have done nothing. It was that one." And he looked at Gwyn. She is gone because of him, my Bethan is." It was said. Gwyn felt almost relieved. He got up slowly and pushed his chair neatly back to the table. Then, without looking at his father, he walked out to the kitchen. His mother was standing by the sink, waving to the Lloyds through a narrow window. She swung quickly round when she heard her son. "Oh, I'm sorry, Gwyn," she said quietly. "So sorry." She came towards him and hugged him close. Her face was flushed and she had put on her apron again. "It was a great party, ma'am. Thanks," said Gwyn. "The other boys liked it too. I know they did." "But I wanted your father to." "It doesn't matter, ma'am," Gwyn interrupted quickly. "It was grand. I'll always remember it." He drew away from his mother and ran up to his room, where he sat on the edge of his bed, smiling at the memory of his party and the way it had been before his father had arrived. Gwyn knew his father could not help the bitterness that burst out of him every now and again, and he had acquired a habit of distancing himself from the ugly words. He thought hard about the good times until the bad ceased to exist. A tiny sound caused him to go to the window. There was a light in the garden, a lantern swaying in the evening breeze. Gwyn opened the window. "Who's there?" he called. He was answered by a high, girlish laugh, and then his grandmother's voice. "Remember your gifts, Gwydion Gwyn. Remember Math, Lord of Gwynedd. Remember Gwydion and Gilfaethwy. Are you being funny, Nain?" There was a long pause, and then the reply. "It's not a game I'm playing, Gwydion Gwyn. Once in every 7 generations the power returns, so they say. Your father never had it, nor did mine. Let's find out who you are." The gate clicked shut, and the lantern went swinging down the lane, while the words of an old song rose and fell on the freshening wind, and then receded until the light and the voice faded together. Before he shut the window, Gwyn looked up at the mountain he remembered his 5th birthday. It had been a fine day like today, but in the middle of the night a storm had broken. The rain had come pouring down the mountainside in torrents, boulders and branches rumbling and groaning in its path. The Griffiths family had awakened, pulled the blankets closer to their heads, and fallen asleep again, except for Gwyn. His black sheep was still up on the mountain. He had nursed it as a motherless lamb, himself tucking it in Mam's old jumper, cosy by the fire, feeding it with a bottle 5 times a day until it had grown into a fine ewe. "Please get her. Please save her." Gwyn had shaken his sister awake again. Bethan had grumbled, but because she was older and because she was kind, she had complied. The last time Gwyn saw her, she had been standing by the back door in her red Mac, testing the big outdoor torch. It was the night after Halloween, and the pumpkin was still on the windowsill, grimacing with its dark, gaping mouth and sorrowful eyes. Bethan had become curiously excited, as though she were going to meet someone very special, not just a lonely black ewe. "Shut the door tight when I am gone," she had whispered, "or the wind will howl through the house and wake Mam and Dad." Then, swinging the yellow scarf around her dark hair, she had walked out into the storm. She had never been afraid of anything. Through the kitchen window, Gwyn had watched the light of the big torch flashing on the mountainside until it disappeared. Then he had fallen asleep on the rope beside the stove. They never saw Bethan again, though they searched every inch of the mountain. They never found a trace of her perilous climb on that wild night, nor did they find the black ewe. The girl and the animal seemed to have vanished.